Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the witnesses. Thank you to the audience for attending. Made in China 2025 was a plan to ensure China took the lead in key industries, including, among others, ships, chips, and drones by the year 2025. That's next year, by the way. The CCP set global market share targets in each sector. In shipbuilding, for example, they set a target to control half the global market by next year, which they've already surpassed. This wasn't by accident. Xi Jinping has called for heightened restrictions on foreign products sold in China while trying to, quote, tighten international dependence on China. How do they do this? They heavily fund the production of goods far in excess of what their internal demand requires, and then export the surplus to other countries at prices designed to undercut the competition. This Chinese practice creates overcapacity, and it makes it nearly impossible for the rest of the world to compete. Thus, the Chinese monopolize markets. History shows us what happens if we do not respond forcefully. Consider what happened to our glass and steel industries. Between 2004 and 2008, the CCP gave glassmakers $30 billion in subsidies, including discounted energy and soda ash, the key ingredients to making glass. This led to a seven-fold surge in exports by 2007. As a result, in those 7 years, America lost 40,000 jobs in the glass industry. And then there's steel. China produces almost 108% of its domestic demand for steel. That 8% surplus may not sound like a lot, but it's equivalent to what the U.S. produces in an entire year. And China produces steel at prices 40% lower than what U.S. steel makers charge. It's no surprise why. China's largest steel maker, known as Baowu, is owned by the government, and just like those glass makers, gets cheap financing and subsidies for coal. China is now the world's largest steel maker, by far, producing more than 12 times the amount of steel that America produces in a single year. We can't let history repeat itself, but in some cases, unfortunately, we are. Take ships. In 1975, we were the world's #1 shipbuilder. Now, we don't even produce 1% of the world's large ocean-going vessels. For every 359 large container ships China builds, we are building one. That is not a typo. We are building one container ship for every 359 the Chinese are building each year. Or take drones. As this chart shows, China currently controls a whopping 90% of the U.S. drone market. So what do we do about it? Here's a brief analogy. In a few weeks, athletes from around the world will gather for the Olympics. Some athletes win by breaking the rules, but others win through investing in themselves and becoming the best at their sport. It's the difference between a rigged game and a fair competition. It turns out that outcompeting the CCP isn't all that different. Because the CCP is not currently playing fair, we need to do two things. One, we need to stop the CCP from breaking the rules. And two, we have to invest in ourselves to win. First, we stop the CCP through trade enforcement. For example, USTR recently launched a Section 301 investigation into the CCP's unfair shipbuilding practices, including investigating the overcapacity issue we discussed earlier. But then it's on us to win the gold. We do this by making smart investments. For example, the CHIPS Act. The CHIPS Act has led to a surge in new chip factories being announced. And unlike the CCP, which favors its own Chinese state-owned enterprises, America is building these chip factories in partnership with others. Just look at TSMC's investments in Arizona or Samsung's investments in Texas. Korean and Taiwanese companies are creating American jobs. But it's time to consider what else needs to be done in other industries. We can win the gold, but We need to do the work to win the gold. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I look forward to hearing our witnesses, and I yield the balance of my time.